thing that we talk about is what it's going to take for us to get salvation. We have the Lord and blessed us with some understanding of a whole lot of things in the Bible, but that's the most important thing. What is going to take for us to get salvation? And it's really sad that the majority of people, now we know it's a lot of sinful people in the world. It's a lot of wicked people in the world. And we understand that. The world is wicked. But what's really sad is you have a lot of people who are misguided that even go to a lot of churches. That's what's really sad. And that's what I try to focus on a lot, because these people who call themselves seeking God should know better, but they haven't taken heed to the warning that the Lord said it would be many false prophets. They haven't taken heed to that. It'll be much false deception, false teaching, false doctrine. They haven't taken heed to that. So they flock into all of these churches, and they're not getting the first iota of what it takes to get salvation. And that's why it's common out here that, you don't have to do nothing to get salvation. That's common theory in the average church. You don't have to do no works. I almost seen people get offended if you start talking about having to do some works. Because that's the common teaching of the day. You don't have to do anything. The law is done away with. The law is done away with. That's what they say. But that don't make no sense at all. First of all, the Bible is speaking about a judgment day. And until you done made it to judgment day, you can't claim to have it made at all, one way or another. You can't claim to have it made until you done got past judgment day. So that's kind of like God got a belt in his hand. You telling people, well, they ain't got to worry about nothing. That's like removing the belt out of God's hand, like God can't do nothing. But you only fooling yourself, because God still got the belt in his hand. You can act like you don't see it. You can imagine just an empty hand. But he's going to whop you, because he is still the judge. And that's why the Bible speaks about judgment day. And if it's going to be a judgment day, it must be some criteria whereby God is going to judge you, right? It got to be some guidelines. And that is his holy law. So when people get deceived, they read a verse here and a verse there that maybe Paul wrote, even though it wasn't nothing wrong with what he wrote. It can be confusing, and they try to get out of any responsibility to God. They use grace. Look, Jesus dying just gave you another chance, but you still got to do it. So we're going to talk along those lines today. And the title is The Wages of Sin, the Judgment of God. Because God is telling you all over that it is a price to pay for sin. And it's a shame, most people don't even know what sin is, because if they did, they wouldn't be trying to do away with the law. Saying you don't have to keep the law. Because whenever a preacher or anybody else tells somebody they don't have to keep the law is done away with, they are actually saying it's okay to sin. Even though they might not understand that. But we understand it because we know that's what sin is. So that's what you're saying. All you preachers or whoever is listening that's telling people they don't have to keep the law. And I know we're going to read something Paul said about not being under the law. You don't understand what he means. But I'm telling you, when you tell somebody they don't have to keep the law, you telling them they can sin. That's what you tell them. You can go ahead and sin because Jesus died for your sin. That's really what they're saying. Jesus died for my sins, and I can just sin it up now. I'm really going to sin now. That's really what they're saying, but that's not biblical. You say, no, don't nobody really mean that. It don't matter. If you tell them they don't have to keep the law and you saved by grace alone, that's what you're saying. You saved by grace alone, but grace requires some action on your part. And the reason why that is because you have already sinned. So you couldn't be saved by the law, but that don't do away with you being obedient to it once you recognize it. We're going to look at it because, again, that's what man been doing. Man been trying to get out of obeying what the Lord is telling us to do in the Bible. And get out of there being any consequences for disobeying. God been showing you from the beginning that it's a price to pay for going against him, for sin. It's a price to pay. There's some wages that you're going to have to cover. Going all the way back to the Garden of Eden, brothers and sisters, Adam and Eve went contrary to the Lord, and he had told them it was going to be wages for them going contrary. He said, the day you go against me to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which constituted talking to this evil one and listening to his information, the day you do that, that's the day you're going to die. And they ignored that warning, and they started talking to him. He told them they was naked and a whole lot of other stuff, and we have been dying ever since. Now we get lying preachers that tell people at a funeral that they really not dead. You calling God a lie just like that. How you going to tell me the person at the funeral is not dead, and God said that's the punishment for Adam disobeying? We are going to die. And you see him dead in the casket. That's amazing. I tell people all the time, if you're going to tell me the person ain't dead, at least hide the body. Don't give me the evidence in my face and tell me they really not dead. I'm looking at them. Some people even go up and hug them and touch them. They are dead. And they won't be alive again until the resurrection. It's simple as that. But now we're going to get into it. The wages of sin, the judgment of God, because God been showing you throughout the Bible. He run it. He called all the shots, and he paid you for wrongdoing. Hebrews, the 2nd chapter. See, people only want, the average church person, I should say, they only want to mention sin when it comes to what they call worldly people, people that's out there just admittedly doing wrong. Like, you know, it's impossible, if I go to church, it's impossible for me to sin. No, that's not the case. Matter of fact, that's who the Bible is talking to, really, mostly the people that call themselves listening to God, going to church. We're going to look at it, though. Hebrews, the 2nd chapter, and verse 1, the wages of sin, the judgment of God. We're going to look at that. It's a price to pay. God is the judge. He's going to pay you. Hebrews 2:1. Go ahead.
Therefore, we ought to give the more earnest heed to the things which we have heard, lest at any time we should let them slip.
Now pay attention even to this one verse, you know, and I like to read stuff to a lot of people that say they believe in the New Testament, because I know they really don't. They call themselves New Testament Christian, which is really nothing, because you got to learn to be a Bible Christian. The whole Bible go together, and it's saying the same thing. The New Testament, listen to me carefully. The New Testament is not letting you off the hook from obeying God's law. It's not doing it. The New Testament is not just telling you all you got to do is believe on Christ and you can sit down and don't have to do nothing else. It's not telling you that. Why would he make a statement like this in Hebrews, the 2nd chapter, verse 1? This is the New Testament, right? Mm-hmm. Therefore, we ought to give the more earnest heed to the things which we have heard. Oh, this is somebody that have heard something, right? Yep. This ain't the average people doing dirt in the street, is it? Nope. This is somebody in the church, right? Who have heard already. This is me and you and anybody else who say they heard about God, right? Yep. He giving you a warning. He said we ought to give the more earnest heed. He said, look, you better stay on top of this thing. Give the more earnest heed to what you done heard, lest what? Finish that again.
Lest at any time we should let them slip.
Lest at any time we should let them slip. That go just automatically being presto saved out the window, right? Yeah. Because he's telling me we got to stay on top of it, lest at any time we let it slip. We can let it slip. You can be walking with the Lord today, and this is telling me tomorrow I can let it slip, can't I? Mm-hmm. And I can be backdoor. This is what he's saying. we got to stay on top of it then. So already we learning that just because